Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Today on this episode, I'm up here at beautiful Union Valley Reservoir in search of big rainbow trout. I've been getting quite a few questions in regards to how to target these late summer trout, and in my opinion, the best way is to do it from a kayak. In the summertime, especially at these mid-elevation reservoirs, the surface temperatures will be extremely warm. However, that doesn't mean the trouts will stop feeding completely. I will be using night crawlers set behind a dropper rig. The dropper rig is a rig that is composed of your hook of choice on a leader attached to a dodger or a flasher, and then from there, I'm lazy, so I like to attach it to another rolling swivel. Some folks will just tie it directly, but use whatever methods you prefer, and then it'll run to a leader that is about 3 times the length of the dodger or flasher to another rolling swivel, and a snap swivel attached to the weight of your choice needed to get down in depth. I am fishing it on Kokanee gear, and it is very important to have a line counter style reel to deploy this method successfully. Another piece of very crucial item to have is a decent fish finder or depth finder. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be expensive, but you will need to know the depth you are deploying this rig at. When deploying this rig, I will feather it out slowly. The reason for this is because if I were to let the line out all at once to the desired depth I want to troll, the rig will cause a tangle as it is dropping down the water column. On the depth finder, I noticed that there were fish feeding about 20 feet to 35 feet. I will always target the fish highest in the water column because those will be the most active fish. This rig is perfect for the anglers in a small watercraft such as an aluminum boat or kayak. It can successfully target fish up to 75 feet in depth from my experience. Anything deeper than that and I will opt to utilize downriggers instead. After deploying it to the desired depth with my setback, I set it in the rod holder. Speed is key for fishing this rig successfully. I am traveling at 0.8 miles per hour because I am pulling a night crawler, and I am also set back at 75 feet with a 3-ounce cannonball. This will get me roughly down to the 20 feet mark that I am marking the fishes at. After trolling for about 0.8 miles per hour, the rod was struck. When a fish strikes this rig, the bite will look almost identical to a powerbait bite from the bank. Because the weight is fixed to a sliding snap swivel, the rod will often just load up and bounce backward, indicating that there is a fish on the line. All I will do is pick up the rod and start reeling. I will also continue to pedal because I do not want slack to develop in the line and lose the fish. After a quick battle, I landed this very nice holdover rainbow trout. This is the kind of fish that will often be caught during this time of year because this time of year will typically favor the boater or the watercraft angler. I will be harvesting my fish today, so I will show him to you guys real quick before throwing him in the ice chest. However, in a few weeks, the temperatures will change and the transition will begin, hence favoring the shorebound angler. But for the time being, the watercraft angler will have the advantage at these mid-elevation lakes. A lot of folks will ask me, how come I just won't utilize a downrigger or Leadcore line then if that's the case? Well, I am demonstrating this technique for the anglers whom don't like the use of Leadcore gear or the use of downriggers. This technique had been around for a very long time. Particularly, it is very popular in the Pacific Northwest, often called the poor man's trolling rig or grandpa's tin boat rig. It is very useful for taking salmonid species, especially if you don't like the use of downriggers or Leadcore. A very nice rainbow trout struck the bait as I was deploying the rig. I am sitting over 90 feet of water. This trout was suspended roughly about 25 feet of water. On the depth finder, I noticed that there were large schools of baitfish present. The shore angler will not be able to access this kind of fish because they are highly suspended during this time of year. But in a few weeks' time, these fish will migrate to the back of creeks and bays, allowing the shore angler to target them successfully. But for now, a watercraft is the best option for the anglers trying to target these lakes. This is a super jumbo rainbow trout. He's probably been in here early on in the season and have acclimated to the food source. I'll show him to you guys real quick, and in the ice chest he will go. A good tip I will give to the anglers trying to do this kind of fishing from a small watercraft is once a fish is located, don't leave fish to go try and find fish. I have found multiple individual marking of fish around this deep bluff. I will not leave this area because I know they are feeding. I know they are feeding because I've located a large school of bait fish, so I am going to work on these fish despite the wind being choppier in this area because I know I can target these fish a lot much more successfully from the kayak. The wind is blowing harshly, and because of this, I know that the setback will cause the lure and the dodger and the bait to lift. So because of this, I will pedal a lot quicker and put my setback a lot further, allowing the bait to go back and descend to the water column that I am getting my bites at. One key mistake that I notice a lot of small craft trout anglers will do is they'll often leave areas where they've caught a fish and continue to move along in a straight line. My strategy when targeting these late summer trout is to look at my depth finder. Your depth finder will be your best friend doing this kind of fishing because you don't have the control of controlled depth trolling such as with a downrigger. It is absolutely important to know how far this rig is being deployed down in the water column. For example, if I were to notice a trout at 25 to 30 feet, I will always deploy this rig above the fish because these fish are looking to feed up. The biggest mistake I see anglers do when fishing this rig is they'll often deploy it way too deep. This trout struck as soon as I got the rig deployed 5 feet above from where I've seen him on the depth finder. Yes, contrary to popular belief, trout will move up the water column to feed even if the water column is warm. Today there is quite a bit of wind, so I know that these trout will actually even actively come up to the surface despite the surface temperature being 75 degrees. I am only utilizing one rod today because of the wind and the element. On this particular day, the wind was blowing very harshly at roughly 12 to 15 miles per hour. Because of this, I am only going to use one rod for my safety. However, multiple rods can be deployed with this techniques with various setback to cover various depth from where the fish are feeding. This is another very nice holdover rainbow trout. I'll show him to you guys real quick and I'll throw him in the ice chest. The water is too warm to utilize a stringer. Some folks will often ask me this time of year how come I don't opt for pulling a spoon or a plug then. The reason I don't pull a spoon and plug this time of year is because most of these reservoirs will be chocked full of bait fish. This fish struck on a very shallow shelf as soon as I got the rig above him. This fish was hovering right above 30 feet of water, and I have this dropper rig deployed roughly about 25 feet of water. Now on the topic of the bait fish issue is because with these lakes being filled with so much bait this time of year, these trout often will not be in a mood to chase. What I often will find is a lot of anglers will pull a spoon all day and then come back to the ramp and complain that they've caught no fish. One important question I will often ask them is, did they break out the bait? The answer more time than not will be an arrogant no because most anglers will say they don't want to touch a dirty worm. I for one don't care, especially when I'm out fishing because my goal is to catch a fish, so I will take out the bait. This is another very nice trout. Hopefully this episode helped those anglers on a small watercraft that do not like the utilization of Leadcore gear or downriggers. This rig had been around for a very long time and will continue to take salmonid species from clear water lakes or any lake in particular where trolling is required. Another great option would be divers, but I will save that for another episode. There is a trout constantly striking at the bait, so I decided to make a turn, and as soon as I made a turn, I hooked him immediately. This is the final trout to make my 5 fish limit. Hopefully this clarifies the topic of how I've been trolling when I don't want to utilize my downriggers and the Leadcore rods. I know a lot of anglers don't like the feel of leadcore fishing, but I can promise you this, leadcore fishing is a lot more effective than utilizing this rig. I will utilize this rig primarily because I'm lazy and I don't want to run one too many leadcore lines behind the boat or watercraft I'm fishing out of. I particularly hate using downriggers on a kayak. I really don't like the idea of constantly bending over to set the rod again. So hopefully, as I demonstrated, this is the 5th fish, and it is a very effective rig for taking trout and salmonid species up to 75 feet successfully from my experience. Overall, it was a great day on the water. I caught a mess of trout for the grill, and I didn't have to mess with downriggers, leadcore, or divers. Hopefully this episode helps the small watercraft guys get out there and catch themselves some fishes. As for the bank anglers, in a few weeks' time, the advantages will be all yours. Until then, it is watercraft season for the guys with a small watercraft or so. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, tight lines, y'all.